I love my job, a teacher and educator. I couldn't see myself doing anything else. The students knew that it wasn't just a job for me. I got involved. I care, and I think I made a difference. I knew I touched the students' lives during their difficult young adult years, and I took that responsibility seriously. In the 12 years I taught U.S. history, civics, and current events at Carver, I was voted Teacher of the Year 3 times. That's a school record. Teaching was all I'd ever wanted to do, standing at the front of a room in front of a group of young people, trying to get them excited about the world, trying to make them think, prepare them for the tough moral and ethical decisions that they'd face as adults. That's how I wanted to spend my life. I began this paper with a quote from the 1999 film Election. I hope none of you thought that I have been teaching for 12 years. Because I wanted to demonstrate the common message that is relayed to society regarding teachers and their altruistic attitudes towards their career or calling. Although we are continuously led to believe that teachers are selfless saints, conveniently wanting only what students need and needing only to give that, we are also becoming keenly aware of the damage that such outlooks have on teachers and consequently their students. Furthermore, we are beginning to see the effects that teachers' administrative and bureaucratic obligations have on their abilities to become and sustain good, that is, transformative teaching habits. While Green states that a teacher in search of his or her own freedom may be the only kind of teacher who can arouse young persons to go in search of their own, we come to realize that many state regulations and policies complicate and impinge this journey to freedom or enlightenment. Therefore, while teachers are attempting to adhere to their mandatory bureaucratic responsibilities, they are effectively limited in engaging in conventionality and routine, which overwhelm teachers' freedom and spontaneity. As Higgins writes, teachers are ordered about not only by administrators, but also by school boards, curriculum experts, parents, politicians, and pundits. However, I focus my paper on extrapolating teachers' accountability to the state and how this impacts the ability for teachers to effectively create change in their classrooms. Teachers are servants of the state for a number of reasons. Number one, funding, or their paychecks, comes from the government. 2, curriculum is set by government officials. 3, teacher induction programs are mandated by the government. 4, required training programs are set by provincial governments. And 5, the introduction of a hierarchical system of authority, specifically chartered teachers, within the field of education. In the following paper, I briefly discuss these 5 factors. I outline possible reasons for why government officials set out such technicist workloads. Finally, I conclude by reiterating the importance of enabling teachers more time to engage in ensuring the growth of their students instead of focusing on meeting government standards. First, the taxpayers within each province ultimately fund the public school system in Canada. However, because the public has granted legal jurisdiction and authority over the education system, the state is a major funder, regulator, and provider of educational services. Therefore, provincial governments get to decide how much money is given to each school board within their jurisdiction. With the approval of the provincial government, each school board is then able to decide how the budget will be spent. The amount of teachers and resources needed to run a school are also determined by the school board, which is ultimately approved by the provincial government. Therefore, teachers are employees of the state. Thus, they are obligated to meet the state's requirements. In fact, Reeves states that because teachers are paid by the government, they are very tightly tied into the whole quality assurance system and the various technologies of compliance and control. Second, the curriculum in schools is initiated by government policies in order to ensure a system-wide consistent learning experience. The curriculum is determined and tightly monitored to ensure it is being similarly executed within all classrooms across each province. Closely connected with issues of context within the curriculum are issues related to the way in which students are being taught. Since teachers are told what they must teach and what they must cover within a set period of time, teachers are left with little room to interpret and apply their own curriculum, to bring their own set of teachings to their practice and or to the development of the profession itself. This is particularly the case since teachers' effectiveness is evaluated against how well their students do on province-wide tests. Therefore, if teachers are rated as being effective teachers based on their students' test scores, which are in turn based on government tests, it becomes clear that government leaves little to no wiggle room for teachers to adjust the curriculum or teach in a manner outside of conventional ways to ensure high provincial test scores. Third, mandatory induction programs, example NTEP, thank you, ensure that the Ministry of Education certifies all teachers. Such programs guarantee that all teachers are provided the necessary knowledge and skills or skill sets to foster positive progress toward provincial goals or standards. While the assumption of these types of induction programs appear to be that standardization will ensure success of new teachers and in turn their students, these programs have not proved to prepare teachers for the classroom. I believe that these types of programs are instilled within the regulations of the education system in order to ensure that, if not all, a large majority of teachers will follow the standards set out by the government agencies, thus further perpetuating the mimetic method of teaching. As well, by forcing teachers to graduate from such programs, the government reasserts its authority and control over them. As one of the participants in Barrett et al.'s study stated, I think that there's just too much of this hands-on practical stuff that's being pushed forward and not that thinking part. The inquiry is being lost, and then we wonder why teachers are being such technocrats. Fourth, government-mandated professional certification programs also constitute the formal efforts of the state to directly or indirectly regulate the teaching profession. Beck presents an example of a teacher's training program in which teachers were trained to become knowledgeable and competent professionals. Levels of competency were measured against having gained key skills, core skills, thinking skills, problem-solving skills, and teamwork skills. Therefore, competent teachers were measured against a set of quantifiably measurable generic criteria that would be applicable to all subjects, all regions, all fields of practice, and at all levels. Creating a trainable profession, as in the case of teaching through certification programs, thus reassures the government that teachers can easily be replaced if they do not adhere to government regulations and policies, therefore reaffirming their control over teachers and in turn reaffirming teachers' servitude to the state. Finally, creating charter teachers was also a way by which government agencies could maintain control over the autonomy of teachers. The status of a charter teacher is achieved by qualifying against a set of occupational standards set out by government agencies. These teachers would act as leading teachers, exerting a significant influence with their colleagues to improve the quality of teaching and learning in schools. These charter teachers would work closely with other teachers to ensure that improvements and progress are made. However, these teachers are still limited in the amount of influence they have on the school or administrative goals. They also have little opportunity to control the broader context in which they perform their professional activities. Their main task is to ensure that teachers are meeting their targets and monitoring and evaluating teachers' work against a set of professional standards set out by the state. This reinforces the notion that teachers act on behalf of the state, as argued within Young and Boyd's article, but in this case they are disguised as charter teacher colleagues. This operationalization and creation of hierarchies of power within the education system severely impacts relationships among teachers, causing mistrust as surveillance is increased, and loss of autonomy as they have yet another boss to report to. Creating mistrust and competition among teachers has worked to the advantage of government agencies. Just as unions have been stigmatized as reflecting communist ideologies and slowly removed from many companies, so too has the collaborative aspect of many professions, including the teaching profession. As Reeves indicates in her analysis, collaborative interaction must be promoted within the education system and among teachers in order to make significant changes, rather than allowing the government to invent a form of teacher professionalism that fosters greater divisions, mistrust, and competition among teachers. Creating competition and mistrust and furthering the dog-eat-dog mantra, so predominant in Western cultures, enables government agencies to have people focus on or regulate themselves and each other, rather than question the system, that impedes their growth as educators. Communities of practice should be the goal of teachers and government agencies to ensure the growth of its students, but ultimately it is the individuality and complicity without questioning our positionalities, and the system which allows government agencies to thrive and meet their political, economic, and social agendas. Government projects get pushed through when citizens and people in professional settings do not contest hegemonic ideals and policies. Governments depend on its citizenry's docility to ensure its plans are met. Besides ensuring the advancement of their personal agendas, governments do not want a mobile and active population. As Foucault wrote, the docile body can be manipulated, shaped, trained, which obeys, responds, becomes skillful, and increases its forces. In other words, when governments hold power over their citizens, as in the case of teachers, they ensure complicity. When the government funds a particular segment of its citizens, it expects that those citizens will push forward their agendas, as teachers do. When the government selects a certain curriculum and administers province-wide tests, it does so to ensure that its citizens are all accumulating and absorbing similar facts. When the government sanctions certain induction programs or training programs for teachers, it does so to ensure that its workers are all being trained in similar manners and that they are like soldiers, subjected, used, transformed, and improved to fit the needs of the governing body. Finally, when the government introduces higher positions of power without actually giving those higher positions any authority, it does so to ensure that its citizens are engaging in self-regulation, surveillancing one another. In doing the legwork, so to speak, for government officials, as in the case of Bentham's Panopticon. And its aim was to establish presences and absences, to know where and how to locate individuals, to set up useful communications, to interrupt others, to be able to at each moment to supervise the conduct of each individual, to assess it, to judge it, to calculate its qualities or merits. Also, it is to ensure that order, routine, and predictable behavior are substituted within the school, so that at any moment, an inspector arriving unexpectedly at the center of the panopticon, or school, will be able to judge at a glance, without anything being concealed from him, how the entire establishment is functioning. I believe that the reason why society does not have or is not willing to commit enough resources for all of its teachers to work as professors do, in conditions compatible with self-renewal, conditions such as teaching fewer courses, with fewer students, leaving time for reading, writing, and open-ended discussions with their students and colleagues, is because teachers are servants of the state, whereas professors aren't as restricted. There are far fewer professors, those who engage in intellectual personal growth in this world, than there are teachers. That's obvious. As well, professors educate only a fraction of the slightly advantaged population, whereas teachers, especially in public schools in Canada, educate people from all walks of life, so to speak. Thus, if governments were to allow their teachers to engage in work the way that they allow professors to, we would have a population that would contradict the very docility the government wants in its population. If all teachers engaged in transformative learning, then the government would run out of docile, transformable, moldable, fixated, and predictable soldiers to carry out its agendas. Furthermore, it would run out of a population that would engage in lower paid labored work because they would realize they deserve more. And we could possibly have more people attempting to grow intellectually and personally. Although Foucault, and I'm coming to conclusion, although Foucault states that a relation of surveillance defined and regulated is inscribed at the heart of the practice of teaching, I would argue that if we want our schools to be, in the words of Paul Metzler from the 1999 film Election, more than a school, like a second home, where we learn to grow as individuals and as a community, then we need to resist adopting bureaucratic orientations. We need to resist an excessive elaboration of rules and a lack of flexibility in their application. And we need our teachers to resist entering into comfort zones comprising of habitual routines, where we do not think much about our practice, where we sometimes do not even question as to whether our practice is best for our students. Finally, we need to resist unanalyzing and unchallenging our presumptions that the system is too big and too difficult to change. Currently, our teachers are servants of the state, but through reflection, inquiry, and collaborative resistance, we can ensure their authority and autonomy. In doing so, we not only allow teachers to ensure their growth as individuals, but consequently, we also allow teachers to engage in teaching and educating the leaders of tomorrow, to think beyond what they are told, to strive beyond docility. Thank you.